Interesting pathophysiological studies into specific diseases. And you can keep yourself busy for years and years and find very interesting things, and you can make beautiful scientific papers. But in the end, what's important is that you come up with a better treatment for the patient. And I think sometimes for some disorders that's more difficult than others. But I think what's really important that once you see an opportunity, you really have to go for it and see how far you can take it, because that's in the end what's going to benefit the patients. So, yeah. So not only focus on beautiful science, but as soon as you identify a specific opportunity, you have to try and see, how far you can take it and see if it really can be for the benefit of the patient.
I think getting the patient's stories out there is also really critical, because that shows you where the gaps are in their care and where they can see improvements. And I think especially with rare diseases, because sometimes you're only seeing 10 patients with this disease, it's hard to really envision how else can you help them without hearing these stories of how they live everyday lives, or their parents if it's a childhood onset disease, things like that. So, for me personally, hearing the patient's stories is really helpful to figuring out how can we best care for them.
I think the thing that I find most invigorating right now is that opportunity to meaningfully treat the certain aspects of the disorder. It's not surprising to me that we have the opportunity to work on some of the heart problems that the kids have, particularly one particular aspect, which is when the children have too much heart muscle. I think the thing that's an exciting opportunity that was not obvious is that the difficulties they have with their learning, with their thought process and so on, seems amenable to treatment with medications if we could come up with the right one. That's a new concept in general, and I think it's not for Noonan syndrome and the related disorders only, but I think it's still a relatively new way of thinking about certain types of problems that affect kids and with rare disorders. I think it's very exciting.
The most important thing is getting the answer so you can actually change care or diagnosis or come up with ways to prevent the problem. So when we make a genetic discovery, it usually gives us insight into pathways that cause the disease, and that can lead to new targets for drugs. It can lead, which is very popular now, to precision medicine. We can say, well, you have this type of genetic problem and you have that type, even though you look the same as the other person. So I think that the future of what we're going to be able to do to really predict and prevent different types of diseases is very, very exciting, and to understand new biology.
When we go into medicine, we all say we come into it because we want to help people. And it really is the most satisfying thing when a patient comes in not really sure how they're going to do, and you're able to make a very precise diagnosis to give them really some peace of mind that you know what they have and how to go about treating it. When you see them do well, there's nothing more fulfilling than that. And it all comes back to the patient, and we all need to remember that that's why we're here and that's why we're doing all this work.
I think is to obviously continue to believe in the possibility of technology and improvement in the quality of life of these patients. And I think there's been a remarkable, what I can convey to my patients is hope that things will get better in the future, because they already did significantly. We are already much farther ahead than we were 10 years ago in the cure or treatment of heart disease. So I think for me it's very important to convey that hope that our limitation right now will likely be the same limitation in 10 years.
Well, I love my patients, and it's been such an honor for me to care for them. And I want their lives to be better. I want them to be better every day. And I want them ultimately to have more hope than they feel right now about the future of their lives. In terms of the everyday, it is around managing their disabilities related to their disorder and doing it in ways that don't completely conflict with their desire just to live. And then in terms of the long-term hope, we're hoping for a cure. And we're hoping for a cure so these patients will no longer need to face this terrible disorder.